Mrs. Laura gazed into the mirror, reflecting on the person she had become, a mere echo of her former self. Her face bore visible signs of her struggles, with bruises that served as painful reminders of the abuse inflicted by her husband, Victor. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "Mommy, are you crying?" Ella, their only child, stood in the doorway, her small eyes filled with worry. Laura quickly wiped her tears and turned to face her daughter, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "No, sweetheart," she said softly. "Mommy's just tired." Ella, just 6 years old, could sense that something was amiss. She had become acutely aware of the sorrow etched into her mother's expression, the way Laura flinched at sudden noises, and how she always wore long sleeves and scarves to hide her imperfections. Ella took a tentative step forward, her small hands reaching out to touch the dark bruise on Laura's cheek. "Did Daddy hurt you again?" "Mommy, why do you stay? He doesn't treat you well." Laura's throat tightened. She found herself lying again to her daughter to protect her from the truth. "Ella, I have told you. Anytime your dad and I are having a conversation, you should stay in your room and lock your door until I come and knock." "Mommy, but I am scared." Laura knelt down, cupping her daughter's face in her hands. "Listen to me, baby," she whispered. "No matter what happens, I love you, and I'll always be here for you. You understand?" Ella nodded slowly, but before she could say anything, they heard the sound of heavy footsteps approaching. The air in the room changed. Laura felt it, and so did Ella. Victor was awake, and he hated waking up alone. Laura quickly straightened up and ushered Ella toward the door. "Go to your room now," she whispered urgently. Ella hesitated for only a second before obeying, disappearing down the hall just as the bedroom door swung open. Victor stood in the doorway, his eyes cold, his presence filling the room like a storm cloud. "What the hell are you doing?" he muttered, his voice thick with sleep. Laura lowered her gaze. "Nothing. I was just..." Suddenly, his hand moved toward her, causing her to stagger back against the dresser. Laura gasped in shock, instinctively covering her face. Victor let out a frustrated sigh, as if annoyed with himself. "Don't make me late for work," he said curtly, turning away. Moments later, the sound of the front door slamming echoed through the house. Laura remained in place, her cheeks stinging and her heart racing. With unsteady legs, she made her way to the kitchen and started preparing breakfast for the family, a quick meal of pancakes and tea. After a few moments, she set the food on the dining table and went to fetch Ella. By the time she returned, Victor was already seated, munching on his breakfast. They ate in silence, the air heavy with unspoken words. Soon, he was done. Without a word of thanks, he grabbed his office bag and car keys, then stepped out of the house for work. Laura let out a quiet breath of relief. She then prepared Ella for school, helping her dress before walking her to the school bus, watching the bus disappear down the street. She felt a pang of guilt. She wanted more for her daughter, a life free from fear. Back inside, Laura sat alone in the big, empty mansion, memories of her former life flashing before her eyes. They say marriage can make or break a person. Hers had shattered her. Before she married Victor, she had been everything a man could want in a wife. Educated, independent, with a promising career. She had a good life, one she had built for herself. Then she met Victor. The signs hadn't been there, not at first. Their long-distance relationship had made it easy to miss the cracks. Victor lived in Accra while she was in another city. The distance masked his true nature. They dated for a few months before Victor proposed. Back then, she had been overjoyed. Now she wished she had seen the truth before it was too late. It all started when she got pregnant with their first child, Ella. Victor had thrown a grand party in her honor, celebrating the news with friends and family. Laura had been over the moon, believing she had married a man who cherished her. But that night, after the guests had left and the house had fallen silent, Victor called her over for a conversation. "I need you to quit your job, Laura," he insisted. Initially, his tone seemed caring, as if he wanted to ease her pregnancy. Laura smiled, feeling a warmth that she believed was genuine concern. "Oh, sweetheart," she replied with a chuckle. "I understand you're looking out for me, but I can't just give up my career. I've invested too much into it." Victor's expression darkened. "I'm your husband, and I don't want you to work. I'll place you on a salary, and you'll stay at home." Laura blinked, her smile fading. "But I can't stay in this big house alone. I'll go crazy." "Why?" His voice sharpened, irritation creeping in. She sighed, sensing his mood shift. Please, I've had a long day. Can we talk about this another time? She stood up, hoping to end the conversation before it turned into an argument. But then it happened. Victor's temper flared suddenly. In a fit of anger, he pushed her back onto the sofa, leaving Laura stunned. She gasped, a sharp sting radiating across her cheek. Are you out of your mind? He snapped. Do you think I'm being unreasonable? I told you, you won't be working anymore. That's the end of the discussion. She sat there, too shocked to react. What had just happened? It felt like a scene from a movie, something unreal, impossible. But the sting on her face told her otherwise, and it had all happened too fast. Laura sat frozen, her hand slowly moving to her stinging cheek. Her mind struggled to process what had just happened. Did Victor just hit me? Her heart pounded violently in her chest. She stared at him, searching his face for some sign of regret, an apology, anything to tell her this was a mistake. But there was nothing. Victor stood over her, his expression cold, his jaw clenched in irritation as if she had done something wrong. Was he drunk? She tried to convince herself that maybe he had too much to drink at the party, that maybe this wasn't really him. Victor, her voice was barely above a whisper. You hit me. So what? He scoffed, rolling his eyes. You were being disrespectful. Laura's eyes widened in shock. Disrespectful? She repeated, disbelief washing over her. I'm your wife, Victor. I should have a voice in this household. He let out a frustrated sigh, rubbing his face as if she were exhausting him. I don't want to argue. Just do what I say, and everything will be fine. She struggled to process his words. Just do what I say. It felt belittling, as if her thoughts and aspirations didn't matter. Tears threatened to spill, but she willed them back. Victor's tone softened slightly. It's for your own good, dear. You'll see. You don't need to worry about work anymore. Just focus on the baby and home. Leaning down, he held her chin firmly, tilting her face to meet his gaze. Do you understand? Laura swallowed hard and gave a slight nod. Good, he replied, stepping away. Now go to bed. This conversation is over. With that, he turned and left her feeling lost and shaken. The next morning, Laura had prepared for work despite Victor's demands. She refused to let last night's incident change her decision. She had spent years building her career. She wasn't going to throw it all away just because her husband suddenly decided she shouldn't work. Dressed in a crisp blouse and skirt, she stepped out of the bedroom heading toward the dining table for breakfast. Victor was already at the table, sipping his tea. His eyes narrowed when he noticed her. What are you wearing? His tone was unsettlingly calm. Laura took a deep breath, but held her head high. I'm dressed for work. Oh, really? He let out a sharp, mocking laugh. Before she could respond, he furiously threw his cup, splattering hot tea across her. Laura gasped, stepping back in shock. Are you out of your mind? Victor shouted, slamming the empty cup onto the table. Didn't I say you would stop working? Laura barely had time to react before he stood up, anger radiating from him. As he yanked his belt from his trousers, her heart raced. Victor, please. But before she could finish pleading, he raised the belt. Laura felt a rush of fear. She tried to protect herself, but the confrontation left her breathless and trembling. She couldn't believe the man she once adored had become this. As her emotions swirled, pain overwhelmed her. Moments later, as silence fell, the reality of the situation sank in. Victor had walked away, leaving her feeling helpless and ashamed in the aftermath. Staring at the floor, Laura felt lost and disoriented, unsure of what to do next. Was he simply having a bad day? The questions flooded her mind, but none could excuse his actions. What could she do now? That night, Victor returned home, holding flowers and chocolates. The sight twisted her stomach in knots. I'm so sorry, he murmured, kneeling beside her, his voice softer than before. He offered her the flowers, eyes pleading for forgiveness. Laura turned away, fresh tears filling her eyes. Victor, please, she whispered, exhaustion weighing down her words. I don't know what came over me, he insisted, inching closer. I promise it won't happen again. He pressed the flowers into her hands, attempting to bridge the gap between them. In that moment, he looked like the man she had once loved, and against her better judgment, Laura allowed him to hold her. That night, he lavished her with affection, kissing her softly, whispering sweet nothings. But beneath that tenderness, the pain lingered and the fear remained. Slowly, the cycle began again. What started as a harsh word escalated to more violent outbursts. Initially, he would apologize profusely, showering her with gifts and pleading for forgiveness, and each time, Laura found it in her heart to forgive him. However, those apologies became less frequent. Gradually, it became a routine. He stopped trying to make amends altogether. Even when she suffered the heart-wrenching loss of their second child, Victor remained indifferent, failing to acknowledge her pain. Laura lay in the hospital, feeling empty and broken, while he sat beside her, intently focused on his phone, ignoring her sorrow. Every day, he grew more distant. Laura felt herself slipping away, her confidence eroded, and her voice silenced. She convinced herself that his actions stemmed from stress, believing he never meant to hurt her. She held on to the hope that the man she fell in love with would return, praying for a miracle. Yet, the situation only worsened. Now, sitting alone in the cavernous mansion that once felt like home, she watched the clock, feeling time slip away. Each hour dragged on endlessly. With a heavy heart, she pushed herself up to prepare lunch, moving through the motions with a numb mind. Afterward, she tackled the laundry, the repetitive sound of scrubbing fabric the only noise in the vast emptiness surrounding her. She waded through it all, longing for the only light in her life, Ella, her source of happiness and her reason for enduring. That evening, the breaking point arrived. It stemmed from a trivial oversight. She forgot to iron Victor's suit that morning. As he prepared for work and pulled out the wrinkled fabric, his temper flared. His voice boomed through the house. "I pay the bills, and you can't even handle the little things," he shouted, ignoring his part in her struggling. Laura sat rigid, gripping the edge of her dress, aware that any response could escalate things further. "Am I not talking to you?" he barked, stepping closer. Fear gripped her throat as she fought to keep her voice calm. "I'm sorry, I just forgot. Let me iron it for you right now." But she never had the opportunity. Victor flung the suit at her, and as she reached to catch it, he kicked out, the force knocking her back to the floor. "Please, Victor. Stop," she cried, curling up defensively. Instead of listening, he only grew angrier. He reached for his belt, the sound of it slicing through the air, filling her with dread. Just then, a small figure charged into the room, stepping in front of her with determination. "Dad, stop it," the little girl cried, her tiny frame shaking but resolute. "Don't hurt my mommy." Victor's face twisted in anger. "Move out of the way, you little brat. Your mother's a disgrace." Finally, as if he had exhausted himself, Victor tossed the belt aside, adjusting his shirt before grabbing another suit from the closet, leaving for work as if nothing had happened. The moment the front door slammed shut, Ella burst into tears, clutching her mother's dress with trembling hands. Laura enveloped her daughter in a warm embrace, rocking her gently as she whispered soothing words, but inside, her mind was racing. This was the tipping point. She had endured far too much. For him to escalate to such fury, targeting her child, displaying his anger in front of Ella, it was absolutely unacceptable. No more excuses. Laura knew she had to leave, and this time, nothing would deter her from taking action. She couldn't delay even a moment longer. With a sense of purpose, she rummaged through the drawers, her heart pounding in her chest. She discovered some money Victor had carelessly left behind, a small but critical amount that could get her and Ella far away from this nightmare. With urgency, she grabbed a small bag and hastily stuffed in a few articles of clothing for both herself and Ella. There was no time to waste. Every second was precious. "Mama, are we leaving?" Ella asked quietly, sniffing as her doe-like eyes watched her mother closely. Laura scooped her daughter up, holding her tightly against her. "Yes, sweetie, and we're not looking back," she reassured her, feeling a mix of fear and exhilaration. With one last glance over her shoulder at the house that had become a prison, she stepped outside with newfound determination, stepping into uncertainty with her daughter in her arms. The journey ahead felt daunting, but Laura found solace in the distance growing between them and Accra. Every mile they traveled felt like a breath of freedom, a release from the constraints that had bound her for too long. Ella, blissfully unaware of the full implications of their escape, hummed softly in the back seat, a reminder that innocence still thrived amidst chaos. As night fell, they arrived in a small village. A tricycle took them to her mother's house, and as Laura knocked on the gate, Sheer exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. When her mother opened it, surprise and concern illuminated her face. For a moment, her mother stood frozen in shock. However, upon seeing Laura's weary expression and Ella's tired eyes, her concern morphed into horror. "My God, Laura! What happened?" Tears welled up in Laura's eyes, and a wave of relief washed over her. "Mama, we're home," she uttered, needing no further explanation. Without hesitation, her mother pulled them into a tight embrace, ushering them inside with a warmth that felt like a long-lost refuge. That night, after they had freshened up and shared a simple meal, Laura lay down with Ella in her mother's old bed. For the first time in years, there was no Victor lurking in the shadows, no fear of echoing arguments, just a deep, tranquil peace settling over them like a soft blanket. Meanwhile, Victor returned late that night, lost in thought. He didn't notice the absence of sounds filling the house. His mind was clouded with exhaustion and frustration from the day's events. Without a glance around, he headed straight for the bedroom, kicked off his shoes, and collapsed onto the bed, his thoughts swarming around the chaos he had left behind. It wasn't until the morning light broke that he realized something was amiss. The house was eerily quiet. No sound of Ella's small footsteps scampering around, no aroma of breakfast wafting from the kitchen. "Laura," he called, the uncertainty in his voice echoing back to him. Silence met his calls. His eyes scanned the room anxiously. He noticed the closet door ajar and half of Laura's clothes missing. Panic surged through him. Rushing to the drawers, he yanked them open. Some money was missing too, alongside Ella's school bag. His pulse quickened. "She's gone." Victor clenched his fists, frustration boiling over as he muttered to himself. "You leave me, Laura," he growled, the disbelief morphing into anger. Victor stormed through the house, hurling open doors, checking every room. It was as if he expected Laura and Ella to be hiding there, but they weren't. Each empty room deepened his panic. She vanished without a trace. Where could they have gone? He was aware that Laura had no close friends in Accra. He had ensured that by isolating her. She had no job or income of her own. She had nowhere to escape. In desperation, he rifled through the wardrobe again, tossing clothes aside as if they held the answers he sought. His chest tightened as dread crept in. Grasping his phone, he told himself that wherever she was, she wouldn't get far. "Laura," he muttered under his breath, rage burning in his eyes. "You think you can just walk away from me? This isn't over. Not by a long shot." Victor began asking around the neighborhood, inquiring with several people if they had spotted Laura leaving, but no one had seen her. It was as if she had vanished completely. A wave of frustration washed over him. He had never anticipated that Laura would actually leave. He had always perceived her as weak and dependent, yet here he stood, alone and bewildered. Suddenly, the weight of realization hit him. All the tasks he took for granted. There was no breakfast waiting, no one to tidy up, no one to absorb his anger. No familiar presence that he could take for granted. He had taken everything for granted, the impact of his actions now glaringly obvious. Before he left for work, he always found an outlet for his frustrations in hitting her. Now, that option had vanished. Irritated, he attempted to prepare his own meal, but without Laura's guidance, he burned the pancakes and ruined the tea. Frustrated, he abandoned the kitchen in a storm of anger, leaving everything behind as he stormed out the door. Stepping into the shower, he let the warm water wash over him, attempting to calm his racing thoughts until a sudden realization shook him. He had a crucial meeting. He glanced at the clock and ran a hand through his hair in panic. It was already 8:30 a.m. His meeting was scheduled for 8 a.m. sharp. Cursing under his breath, he hurriedly dressed, grabbing the first suit he could find before rushing out the door. In his haste, he didn't even notice the faint smell of smoke from the kitchen. By the time he reached work, it was 9:30 a.m. The damage was done. The investors had already left. Victor's boss greeted him with an icy glare, his voice sharp. "You had one job, Victor," he barked. "Do you have any idea how much we lost today because of your negligence?" Victor struggled to explain himself, desperation creeping into his voice, but his boss wasn't listening. "There's no excuse for this. If it happens again, you're finished." Overwhelmed with rage, he clenched his jaw, fury boiling inside him. First, it was Laura, and now his job was in jeopardy. His life felt like it was crumbling apart. and he knew he couldn't let her escape without repercussions. As Victor simmered in his office, fuming over what had transpired, his phone rang. An unknown number flashed on the screen. Though he felt inclined to dismiss it, something urged him to answer. "Hello," he answered, his irritation evident. "Mr. Victor, your house is on fire." His heart sank. "What?" "The whole place is engulfed in flames. We called the fire department, but it's getting worse. Everything could be gone." Dread washed over him as he remembered the gas. He hadn't turned it off. Weak at the realization, he sank into his chair as panic coursed through him. Everything he had, the luxurious lifestyle, his treasured belongings, was being consumed by flames. He needed to leave right away. Without a moment's thought, he stormed into his boss's office. "Sir, I must go? My house is—" His boss cut him off sharply. "Permission? You lost us millions today. You think you can just leave?" "Sir, it's an emergency," Victor pleaded. "Victor," his boss said coldly, "don't bother coming back." Stunned, Victor could only absorb the weight of his reality crashing down. His job, his home, everything gone in a single day. Leaving the office without another word, he felt the enormity of his loss settling around him. As Victor drove, smoke billowing in the distance, the urge to act overwhelmed him. The wreckage of his life became increasingly clear. When he finally reached the scene, the remnants of his former life lay in smoldering ruins. Firefighters were hard at work, but there was nothing left to salvage. Victor's heart raced in his chest, a mix of anger and despair. This was all Laura's doing. She had left him to face this calamity alone. If only she had stayed, if only she had obeyed, everything would be all right. In the silence of the aftermath, he faced the devastating truth. He had lost everything. Days stretched into months, and during that time, he was utterly alone. All the riches and power he once held seemed meaningless now. Lying in his hospital bed, abandoned by those he once called friends, Victor was left to confront the consequences of his actions. All he had left were regrets for the family he had taken for granted. With every fleeting moment, he became aware of the scars he had caused, both to Laura and Ella. He longed to turn back time, to regain the love he had chased away. Now vulnerable and lost, he finally grasped the pain he had inflicted.